Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting video. Today on the show, I'm going to be comparing two Dragon Ball Z movies, Wrath of the Dragon and Fusion Reborn. I'm going to talk about some of the good, some of the bad, and really compare these two movies and talk about where they went right and where they may have went wrong. Let's start with Wrath of the Dragon. So to give you guys a little bit of context, I originally watched all the Dragon Ball Z movies before I decided to watch the original Dragon Ball anime, which I did not complete the Dragon Ball anime, and I just recently completed all of Dragon Ball Z Kai. I'm more or less caught up on Super for the subbed version. I skipped the Battle of Gods and the Golden Frieza arc, and then for the dub, I've watched completely through the Battle of Gods arc, and I'm currently where the dub is in the Golden Frieza arc, to give you a context of how much Dragon Ball history I've really absorbed. I'm definitely not like the best person to talk to when it comes to Dragon Ball. I have friends and relatives who know far more than me. This is just my opinion on these movies and how I feel about them and where I think they went right and wrong. And if you guys have differing opinions or you have similar ideas, I'd love to hear from you guys. I can't currently see the live stream chat, so if you chat to me your ideas, I won't be able to see them. But if you put them in the comment section below on this video, I'll definitely reply to your comments and hit you up on those. Continuing where we left off, again, I'll be comparing Wrath of the Dragon and Fusion Reborn. Let's start with Wrath of the Dragon. Now, spoilers, duh, for these two films. So if you would rather see these films without them being spoiled, I recommend checking them out. There are a lot of legitimate ways to watch these films, but there are also a few websites here and there if you guys wanted to pause this video and open a tab and check out that film, and then come back to this video maybe after it's uploaded, or maybe even definitely not mid live stream. I'm not going to go long enough for you guys to watch two films or even one of them, but you can definitely watch these films and then come back to this video later if you want. So let's talk about the positives of Wrath of the Dragon. Holy fucking shit. No one told me that Wrath of the Dragon was Dragon Ball meets kaijus. That blew me away. I didn't have a high bar set. All I knew from the movie was just the title card that shows the dragon punch. I didn't even see that down here in the corner of the frame, there's a giant fucking monster, and then it's the main villain of the film. That had me engrossed as fuck. I had never seen any of the Dragon Ball characters fight a villain at that scale, and that was just just mind blown. I feel like it was executed in a very solid way, and I will definitely give my reasons for why I think it was well executed. For one, there are moments of the film that have levity, where it's oh, they're making a little joke. You know, you have the Saiyaman 1 and Saiyaman 2 thing where they're giving this really long spiel about justice and saving people, and the criminals say, wasn't that really long? And then Saiyaman 2 goes, yeah, why do we have such a long thing to talk about? And those aren't overly silly. They're the moments of comedy in Wrath of the Dragon. You know, they're telling a joke without making the music be dong 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 dong. You can hit comedy levels in Wrath of the Dragon without having a heavy tone shift. Things don't have to go completely off the rails for a joke. And then when it's really serious, when there's just dark shit happening on the screen, you feel it. The tone reflects what's actually happening. And even when it's a joke, the tone doesn't shift heavily. There's a scene in the film, and it's one that sticks with me. And it's where Tapion, who's a Link from Legend of Zelda type character, I feel like people draw a lot of comparisons to him. He has a sword in the ocarina, so he has that Link style to him. He has a memory to his brother, smiling while a giant monster is destroying the city, and all the citizens are running away from the monster. And Tapion has that memory and then flashes back and says, why did he smile? He doesn't understand why during this moment of turmoil that his brother smiled. And that shit's never explained. But but I think that's what makes that scene so good. The fact that like it's a mind fuck for everybody, and it just seems so sinister. That smile, like why did he smile? And the fact that Tapion like acknowledges it, it makes the audience think about it further. And I know that's such a small thing, but it means a lot. Um, like to me, in the grand scheme of things, I felt like that was like one of the darker scenes in the film. Tapion having this connection with Trunks, I think, is also a big part of the film. Trunks looks up to Tapion as like, this is what I want to be when I grow up. And Trunks's like idea of Tapion being this heroic character, being this like figure that he can look up to, but Tapion himself looking at like who he is and what his like situation is with having a monster inside of him and having to like keep it concealed. He keeps pushing Trunks away, but eventually Trunks fills his like little brother role, which as far as Tapion knows, his little brother is dead. This is again like a mystery. Tapion's little brother is this character who you see in flashbacks, but even Tapion himself doesn't know the fate of his brother. So Trunks fulfills this brother role for Tapion, but Tapion fulfills the brother role for Trunks, as Trunks has never had any other siblings at this period in time. So he's always wanted like an older brother figure to look up to. And their relationship is a very big part of the film, in which I'm going to talk about something that happens near the end of Wrath of the Dragon. And that's Trunks being put in a position where he must kill Tapion. So Tapion has the upper half of the large kaiju beast, which is the main villain of the film, locked inside of him. And whenever he falls asleep, this half of the kaiju is released and it wreaks havoc. So at a certain point in the film, Tapion absorbs the entire kaiju into his body, but he can only hold it for so long. And Trunks is put in a position where he must kill Tapion. And Tapion gives him the sword and like looks at Trunks and says, "Kill me." Like he begs Tapion to like murder him. And I was sitting there like, is Trunks really gonna kill him on screen? Is that gonna happen? It's incredibly dark, and it doesn't like try and do silly things to lighten the tone. You know, Trunks throughout the film is put in situations where he has to like trust Tapion or keep believing in Tapion, even though Tapion repeatedly like shrugs off Trunks. Trunks tries to be his friend, tries to bring him food, but Tapion is like very avoidant. You know, he's not sharing a lot of the story with Trunks that we get as audience members. He tells Bulma a lot of his backstory, and he tries to tell Trunks some of his backstory, but Trunks falls asleep. Trunks really doesn't have much to go on with Tapion, but there's this trust between them where even though Trunks is thrown into these situations with Tapion, who more or less is a stranger, he finds himself trusting Tapion in the end, and this Trunks-Tapion relationship carries all the way to the end of the film, where Trunks, even though it's against his better judgment not to kill Tapion, doesn't kill Tapion. And it's a legitimate point in the film, and I feel like it makes the film stronger. Trunks and Tapion's relationship makes Wrath of the Dragon a really solid film, as well as the fact that it maintains a serious tone throughout. I highly recommend Wrath of the Dragon if you have not seen it. Even though I talked a lot about like serious points in the film, I feel like you'll still enjoy it. Let me real quick talk about the main thing I don't like about Wrath of the Dragon, and that's the actual ending. So I loved seeing Vegeta and Goku face off against a kaiju, and the kaiju just demolish them. Goku doesn't run up to it in base form and like punch the kaiju so hard that it like flies into like a desert wasteland, and Vegeta doesn't final flash him and rocket him into the moon and they fight in space or anything dumb. Like, this kaiju is so powerful that even though these powerhouse characters who we've seen do so many different things, also another big point that I need to like talk about when it comes to Wrath of the Dragon is that this movie takes place post Buu Saga. So Buu Saga has already happened. You got to keep in mind that Vegeta's alive, Goku has Super Saiyan 3, Gotenks is a thing, and Gotenks has Super Saiyan 3. So this must, I feel, take place in the timeline after the Buu Saga. So we have post-Buu Saga level Goku, post-Buu Saga level Vegeta fighting off against a kaiju that's rampaging through a city, and this kaiju is still just flicking them away like ants. He's still like knocking them through buildings and like giving them trouble. Vegeta saves like a group of civilians and passes out. Like that's the most he can muster because this kaiju is that strong and it's that much of a threat. It's really hard to create a threat in the Dragon Ball universe. We have these characters who just keep amping up their power more and more and fighting off against beings that are so strong that they can annihilate planets in a single attack. So to give that feeling of, wow, this beast is that strong, this beast really can give our heroes trouble, is incredible. It really is, to be able to like still make the audience feel after everything else, our heroes may not be able to win this in the end. And with that, it's kind of a shame that the way the film ends, and again, this is a pretty heavy spoiler for Wrath of the Dragon. I highly recommend you guys see it if you haven't seen it already. Here we go with the spoiler. We actually like lost a viewer at that point. Fair enough, you know, if you want to see the film and like not have it spoiled. Goku goes Super Saiyan 3, does the Dragon Punch, kills the kaiju. That's how the movie ends. Like, we've seen Goku and Vegeta go out and like try and beat up on it. We've seen Saiyaman fight against the kaiju. We've seen Tapion fight. We've seen Gotenks fight. We even saw Gotenks in Super Saiyan 3 fight against the kaiju. But the film ends with Goku not only turning Super Saiyan 3 and fighting against the kaiju and killing it with the Dragon Punch, which sounds cool, right? Like, on paper, that doesn't sound like a horrible way to end it. But it's not really a fight. Goku goes into Super Saiyan 3 and he does the cocky thing, like, I'm so strong, I'm so above your level that you're just like a fly to me kind of thing, which is the main thing that I argued I didn't want to see, and I was so glad that like the monster posed a legitimate challenge to him. But essentially, like, it didn't. He finally goes Super Saiyan 3. He beats the kaiju's ass like he's just like second-rate bullshit, you know. And then he flies through his fucking chest with a golden dragon. I'm not saying that's not cool. I'm not saying it's not great to see that. But even though it's such a cool move for him to use and it's such a like action-packed scene, it lacks flavor. It lacks the serious tone and the like power that you saw in the kaiju before. It's cool that Goku had to go to that level to defeat the kaiju, but it's just shitty that it wasn't a real fight. If Goku still had to like give it his all and it was still like a really difficult fight in the end, then it would have been great. But just flying through the monster's chest in Super Saiyan 3, that was a horrible picture. Just flying through the monster's chest at Super Saiyan 3 and just wrecking his whole day with a giant, massive golden dragon. That's just not enough for me. Really, I feel like that's the lowest point of Wrath of the Dragon. And all they would have really had to have done to make it better would have had just Super Saiyan 3 Goku not swag on him so hard. Just make it a really high endurance fight. Make Goku really be pushed to his limits and heavily damaged. And as a final move, something that like he has to do in order to overcome, make him do the Dragon Punch. And it would have been a solid film. Another solid way I feel like they could have ended Wrath of the Dragon that would have kept with the dark tone and would have really kept things going would have been Trunks actually having to have killed Tapion. It would have like subverted a lot of people's ideas of like, oh, well, he's probably just going to do this, you know, he's probably just going to do a really big move and like kill the monster. Because that is how it ended. It ended in the way that you could easily imagine it would have ended. But if Trunks had killed this like older brother figure, and it was like a way of passing the torch, because Tapion talks about how like he's bonded with Trunks. They've really like hit this next level. And Trunks even like takes Tapion's sword at the end. But at the end of the film, it's given to him by Tapion because Tapion, of course, survives and then flies off into space. But they could have had it where Trunks has to kill Tapion. And Tapion, as he does at the end of the film, would have given Trunks the sword and like passed on the mantle and said like, it's now like you're now Tapion. You now are at this point where you need to just grow up and like take on more responsibility. You've become the hero that you've always wanted to be. For Tapion to say, in my eyes, you are like on my level now, would have really like shaped Trunks as a character. And Trunks killing Tapion would allow Trunks to get a victory. For one, he would like he would defeat a major villain, but he would also grow as a character and develop, and the movie would keep the dark tone. And I feel like it still would have been satisfying. It's like a dark and like kind of sad ending, but it's a coming of age story of Trunks that really pushes his character to the next level. And I feel like that would have been a really solid end for the film. Now let's talk about Fusion Reborn, aka a bunch of good ideas thrown together into a pile of fucking bullshit. Again, this is my opinion. I'm not saying objectively it's the worst fucking thing I've ever seen, but in my opinion, it's absolute garbage. Fusion Reborn, what upsets me about it is it has so many good ideas. It has so many good premises. Like it does so many good things, but it just tries to be a like comedy, and it's not a fucking it's not like a funny thing that's happening. But it like in every instance it tries to make things a joke, but it's not. Essentially, Fusion Reborn is a film where soul funk or whatever, like they clean the souls of hell. And when they clean the souls, they like remove the evil from the souls. And it goes into this big vat. And when the soul funk or whatever goes in this vat, there's this demon boy who's taking care of the vat. And the vat explodes and the boy gets mutated by it. And he becomes Janemba, who is the big bad of Fusion Reborn. Now, Janemba is a cool-ass villain, but before we get into that, it takes place during the Otherworld tournament, and Goku's fighting Pikkon or whatever, and there's just so much good, but there's so much bad. Let me, like, describe the film in a less frustrated way and talk about, like, how, on the surface, the words I'm saying are really cool, but they execute it really bad. Imagine the barrier between our world and the afterlife is destroyed. Forces of evil throughout all of time are coming back to life. Some only existing within the movie universe, like Bojack, but others being like legitimate villains that we've seen in the past. Cell, Frieza, any force that the Z Fighters have fought before have risen from the grave and they're terrorizing Earth. But the only way to stop this threat, a threat that's even beyond the power of Shenron, is for Goku and Vegeta, two of Earth's fallen warriors, to fight off against maybe the strongest threat they've ever faced, a being who is able to reach and transcend space reach and transcend through space itself, punching his opponents through portals, armed with a special sword. They must defeat a foe of this magnitude in order to save not only our world, but the world of the dead. Like, Fusion Reborn on paper has one of the coolest Dragon Ball plots ever. Wouldn't it be great to see the Z Fighters fight off against like all their old enemies together, all revived at once? Bojack, Cell, Frieza. You could have Raditz come back. That nigga died. Like, anyone who's dead could come back in this movie, and we could see the Z Fighters and their new ultra-powered state face off against them. But instead, we get a load of fucking garbage. And I'll elaborate. So one thing that I pointed out in Wrath of the Dragon is that it had like a really solid tone. It's a serious movie throughout, and it keeps the serious tone. What Fusion Reborn does is it makes everything that happens a joke by throwing in music that's like dun 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 dun, or having like Trunks and Goten fight Hitler for a good period of the film. He fights like Nazis. They fight Nazis, and the Nazi jokes, like the Nazi fights, are jokes. It's not like the Nazis are rolling tanks through the city, shooting off and blowing up buildings, and like people are dying and like buildings are collapsing with fire or anything. Which, by the way, is like how the kaiju battles in Wrath of the Dragon are presented. Gohan flies over the city and you see the destruction and the mayhem reflected in his sunglasses. And he has this moment where he's like, oh my God, like what's happening? Like, what could have done this to the city? You know, there are like real stakes at hand. But instead you get like really silly Nazis, and there's a line where Hitler sees like Goten and Trunks and Super Saiyan and goes like, blonde hair and blue eyes and super powerful. I shouldn't be trying to kill him. I should be trying to recruit him, right? Like, and that was, I understand that joke. Like, that was a funny joke, but it would have been a cooler joke if everything else was really serious, right? Like, if it had like a hard contrast to go off of, it'd be nice. But everything in the film is given this like lighthearted tone when it could be serious. Goten and Trunks versus Nazis could actually be really cool, you know, even though they should stomp. Because like there's nothing the Nazis can do that's on the level of Goten and Trunks. But a lot of the movie involves cutting to Goten and Trunks playing around with the Nazis. And it is them playing. They're not serious. They're not like pushing their power to its limits to fight off against Hitler. Gohan fights off against Frieza, and it's barely a fight. It just kind of happens. They gloss over it. You know, he hits Frieza and more or less one-shots him. We get to see a bunch of villains from Dragon Ball's past pop up, but we don't get to see them for more than like a few frames, and we don't get to see them fight off against the Z fighters. Where was Piccolo? Where was Krillin? Why wasn't there like a legitimate battle against all these villains? I feel like a lot of the film could have been them fighting these villains. Big Janemba. So Janemba has this like big, fat, rotund form in the back. This is how we're introduced to Janemba. And I get that Big Janemba is like a reflection of like Good Boo, like the fat Majin Buu that we originally see kind of thing. And Janemba is like a movie parallel of Majin Buu. He has this like silly form, and then he has like a really serious like monster form, but it's wasted. Like we didn't need it, I guess, is the big thing. Like the scenes that have the Big Janemba before he turns into his more monstrous form are just there for more comedy, and it's to give you like a sense of what's going on and like what Goku has to do. Like, they could have trimmed off a lot of the Fat Janemba scenes. I don't think he needed to not be in it at all, because I liked seeing Goku have to go Super Saiyan 3 to face off against Fat Janemba. Then after going Super Saiyan 3, which at the point was like the strongest form, right? Janemba comes back as this form, and this form is so strong that Super Saiyan 3 Goku can't do anything against him, which is why Goku and Vegeta have to fuse into Gogeta in order to defeat Janemba. So I like the fact that Janemba had two forms, one that was so powerful Super Saiyan 3 had to fight him, and one that was so powerful that you needed the combined powers of Goku and Vegeta into Gogeta in order to overcome him. But for one, instead of Fat Janemba, you could have had like a weaker Janemba form that could have actually put up a solid fight with Goku, and you could have had a stronger, which is what they did. You know, like the second Janemba form, I don't have a lot of argument against. He was cool. The first Janemba form, I feel like could have put up more of a fight. Also, Janemba has such great powers and abilities. He even at one point makes a mini Goku in his hand that shoots a Kamehameha. It's the craziest shit I've ever seen. But like, it only happens once. Like, that was pretty incredible. He can like reach his hands through portals. He can disassemble his body in like a jigsaw puzzle type of way and like reconfigure himself. He has so many cool powers and abilities that he uses throughout the fight. But again, all of these things that I'm naming are undermined by the lighthearted tone. Why is it when the barrier between the other world and our world is broken, there are all these like fucking jelly beans everywhere? Why is it that like everything has to be really silly the whole time? There are scenes where you can tell that like this is like some actiony shit happening and it should be serious. Our heroes are literally fighting in hell. They're in hell fighting off against Janemba. And even though they're in hell fighting off against Janemba and things should be really serious, it's just a joke. It's just a joke the whole time. Goten and Trunks fight Nazis, it's a joke. Gohan faces Frieza, barely happens. You know, it's so short that it's forgettable. That like Gohan faces off against a revived Frieza. It just doesn't, it's wasteful. So I feel like Fusion Reborn had the potential to be on the level of Wrath of the Dragon. I think that's like my big takeaway here from the Dragon Ball Z movie comparisons. Both of these films showed a lot of promise. They showed like, here's a really cool premise for Dragon Ball. How do we make this work? How do we like push this to its limit, right? And even though they had these cool, groundbreaking plot points, one, I feel, clearly surpassed the other. Now, what's interesting about this, that we can take it like even further, is that Wrath of the Dragon is the 13th Dragon Ball Z movie. And Fusion Reborn is the 12th. So Fusion Reborn, I feel like, was a heavy misstep. They, I think, may have realized that they took too light of a tone with Fusion Reborn. And then it wasn't the ideas they were having that was bad, because Fusion Reborn is full of good ideas. It just doesn't have the execution that with Wrath of the Dragon, they found a way to make the tone darker, make a tone that really reflects the weight of what's happening in the story. And by doing so, they really like set it up in a way to where it's an exciting film that's engaging and has challenges for the characters that are well presented. And I'll be honest, Fusion Reborn, I feel better about them achieving this higher form and just whooping on Janemba's ass. Like, in Wrath of the Dragon, it doesn't feel earned, Goku's victory. He goes Super Saiyan 3, he swags on the kaiju, and he just wins. But you can argue in Fusion Reborn, they go into Gogeta, they swag on Janemba, and they win. But the difference in power between Goku and Vegeta separately and Gogeta is so clear. Like, it makes sense in my eyes for the combined power of Goku and Vegeta to just raffle stomp Janemba. Janemba should not be able to challenge them in that way. But the kaiju he was really like giving Goku the hands. Goku was having legitimate trouble. And I know that Super Saiyan 3 is a hard multiplier. It's not like a baby step up from Super Saiyan 2. He gains like a ton of power. But even with the power that he gains in Super Saiyan 3, I just felt like it didn't seem like a solid victory. I just wish Super Saiyan 3 didn't easily swag on a kaiju. I wish it was like he had to fight really hard to get there, but I don't feel he did. Now, Goku did know like a weakness of the kaijus, and he was exploiting that weakness as Super Saiyan 3, which makes it less of just raffle stomping. You know, it's the difference between he goes Super Saiyan 3 and he just swags on Superman, or him going Super Saiyan 3, but he's like, but I also am like covered in kryptonite or whatever. You know, like he took advantage of something that he knew could harm the creature and use that to his advantage, which is clever. And that is like a good use of Goku using his mind and his body to overcome a threat. But I still feel like it wasn't as well earned as it could have been. Because I really just feel like Goku just needed to have fought harder. Like, it just should have, the kaiju should have given him still more trouble, but he should have had just enough power left in him to do the Super Dragon Fist. So I think that's one thing that I have to say about it, is that Fusion Reborn's ending feels satisfying enough. Janemba gives Goku and Vegeta hella trouble separately, but we know that when they form Gogeta, they form a being that surpasses like many of the limits that Vegeta and Goku have separately. And if Super Saiyan 3 can swag on first form Janemba, right, then Gogeta, who I feel personally goes beyond Super Saiyan 3 by being the combined powers of Goku and Vegeta. I feel like Goku and Vegeta, I feel like in his own form is stronger than just like Super Saiyan 3, that he should just swag on Janemba. So I think that is like one thing that I got to give Fusion Reborn credit for. The way they defeat the main villain feels right. I don't have like a problem with that in particular. But Fusion Reborn, I say, is skippable. I feel like you really don't need to see this film. I'm not saying Gogeta isn't fresh as fuck. I love Gogeta. Gogeta is awesome. But I would argue that the best way to watch Fusion Reborn is to look up SSJ9K Fusion Reborn parody on YouTube. That's SSJ9K Fusion Reborn parody. I actually saw that parody, and it made me want to rewatch Fusion Reborn because, like I said, I've seen all the Dragon Ball Z films, but it's been a really long time since I've seen all of them. So I revisited Fusion Reborn, and I watched it alongside my friend David, and both of us like finished that film and said the parody was so much better than the actual movie. So I would highly recommend skip Dragon Ball Z Fusion Reborn, but if you really want to see it, check out the SSJ9K version of Fusion Reborn. Really funny movie. Like, Fusion Reborn tries really hard to be a comedy, but it fails. But the parody of it succeeds where I feel the actual film failed in doing a lighthearted comedic Dragon Ball film. And with that, you more or less have my verdict on the two films. Wrath of the Dragon was a serious, dark tone film that may have not had the best ending in the world, but to be honest, that wasn't like a big fall of the film. I feel like the film really does a good job of presenting itself and presenting high stakes and building upon the character of Trunks and giving us all these mysteries and all these things to think about while putting our Dragon Ball heroes in a situation that many of us may have never imagined them to be in. So Wrath of the Dragon, I would give 6 out of 6 Matty Fucks. If you're new to the channel, that's how we rate things. So Wrath of the Dragon right now is my favorite Dragon Ball movie of like any franchise right now. I really want to see Dragon Ball Z Super Budokai Tenkaichi. Or is it Tenkaichi Budokai? You guys can correct me in the comment section below. It's the one that has Goku 4D in it, but that's Japan Universal Studios exclusive thing. But I really want to see that one. But until I see that one, I feel like Dragon Ball Z Wrath of the Dragon is my favorite Dragon Ball Z movie. And trust me, if my opinion changes, that movie is the other movie I see is going to be good as fuck. And I'm going to make a video on it if it is better than Wrath of the Dragon. And Fusion Reborn, I'd have to say, out of the Dragon Ball Z movies, is one of the worst I've seen, though I've heard Bio Broly is pretty terrible. And like I said, I've seen all the films, but it's been so long since I've seen them. I don't really remember a lot of them. My brain can remember a few flashes of Bio Broly, and I remember a few scenes from the BoJack film, but I don't remember them in heavy detail. I watched Dead Zone a lot when I was a kid, and I watched the Cooler movies a lot when I was a kid. So I remember a lot more about them because we had them on VHS back in the day. But yeah, if you guys want to see more Dragon Ball Z videos from me and Dragon Ball videos, make sure you like this video and post in the comment section below what you thought about this format, if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, and your thoughts on Fusion Reborn and Wrath of the Dragon. What did you guys think? Maybe you feel like Wrath of the Dragon was a poorer movie since I gave it like practically a perfect rating. And what if you felt like Fusion Reborn deserved like a better rating than what I gave it, make sure to tell me in the comment section below. If you like this video, make sure to like this video, favorite, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell so you'll be notified whenever we do more videos and live streams. Make sure you smash that like button. We're trying to get it up to 5 likes if possible. Thank you guys once again, and have a wonderful night. This is Jet Black, logging out.